gentlemen, it is just after 4, and you have tuned in to MarionTenderPablo live Instagram interviews with me, MarionTenderPablo. You already know, Mr. And I'm not alone, as always. I'm with Soetry_SA. Dinta, you.
Ay, stressless man. We're shocking big.
I don't know the first and first. How did you come up with the name Soetry?
Basically, it's solely plus poetry. Like, there's no deep meaning behind it. Solely, like, my real name is solely poetry. I've been, like, looking for stage names for a while. When I blew whatever you yourself, I've been, like, soldier. Usually because, like, solely is, like, considered soldier. And then I've been prodigy. And then I've also been blue pages. So, and then poetry is where I was like, yeah, now we're in here for poetry. But then those many names was back then, just a rapper, you know, when you were still doing music. Yeah.
Sure. I got one, like my beats. I did some like, you know, at some point I was like, poetry. For me, it was like, okay, it's like we saw a tree, like I like, yeah, know, like saw a tree. But nice one. Like, I hope like everybody who have tuned in, like get us like something before all right. You're tuned in to MarionTenderPablo live Instagram interviews. I'm with Soetry. Give it to us, my brother.
Re go direle masogana a go tlhodimelwa ke dithaba re phulasego ga gešo ga re ba tsebe bashimane ba go palelwa ke pitša re ithega ka sebešo ge re tekatekiša ke tlala re tlhabela pitša thedi ge e swa marago ra tlatša dipounama ka dinama tša digaka le digwale dikgoropo le mantshetlhana rena re a tseba gore lesogana la go soka dikgomo le sotla mosetla ge le sokwa ke mala gape menwana ya bashimane ba katapitse ba motlhare wa go ema boka setlhare re bina mantlapulele le dikalana ba galabe ba bina sa koša ke lerole le dikala ga ramatsi re tseba go tlatša dijo go tlatša dimpa ka dijo le dinonwane tša kokofeke a le mo tseba kokofeke ke mogekolo wa go ja marapo a tlhogo ntle le meno ba shupa potsa pitšeng ya go tholwa sebešo sa atlhama sa makala digong tša tsena ka ganong bjale rena re bashimane ba go ba le matsogo e se go a go iša o mongwe seatla go ba liša e upša matsogo a go bopa le go ithinta ge re wiša ke diphuti le diphudufudu
ai hoa ke tsona o bona ke kgatlega go bua le sepedi or language ya bo motho e tswelela wa understand and having to consider the poem that you have just recited for us ne? I think it is some kind of a celebrating poem ne?
It is.
I think having to have heard that poem, this just takes me to the question that is following is that do you think like winning the competition that you have won, like being a poetry champion, have made you recognize more?
Yeah, to be honest, it did. What happened, I usually, one of the initial reasons why I went to Word and Sound, I remember Word and Sound was the first slam. No, it wasn't the first slam. It was one of the biggest slams I went to. Was number one, for recognition, number two, to learn more, number three, for some publishing deals and everything, and to get more gigs. So it definitely does, because there's some people right now muttering as I pass it, like, yo, Soetry, and I'm like, hey, and yeah, it's a feeling I won't lie. So it does, like,
you. Alright, so do you enjoy writing in your own mother tongue or like in other, like in English or maybe in vernac? Like how do you feel comfortable in writing in which language?
So what happens is that initially I started writing English. So but then the thing is, Sepedi has a very crucial part in my writing, English included, because like the concept that I write, they are actually from the Pedi culture, and they're also from home. For example, the poem How It Took a Village to Raise a Storm. Concept there, and what happens is, I guess about 1 hour, like Jesus said, like a whirlwind comes towards you, but it also shoot, like you just point at it, and then it will go the other way. So like you see, like so I found I use like petty concepts and everything, and then Kangwalaka English usually, but then I'm comfortable with both. But the only thing he realized it is that usually in terms of celebration or when I'm in a good mood, you know, I like a good poem in terms of healing and not trauma, Kangwalaka spade. But then usually English, it's usually filled with a lot of kind of serious stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of bombastic words. Hey.
I don't have bombastic words, guys. I use words like father, son.
Yeah. All right. We know you guys. You like questioning our vocab and our mental capacity. We're like,
What I'm gonna say is that and Tatali Vividladi said that there's no such thing as a big word. A big word is simply just a word that you don't know yet. So yeah.
That's
what happens.
All right. All right. What is the next one called?
It's called Web. Yeah.
As in like
movie. Yeah.
Oh, nice. All right. Guys, you have tuned in to MarionTenderPablo live Instagram interviews with MarionTenderPablo. Give it to us, Soetri.
I took in a deep, clean breath to search every passage in my lungs. I took out all that I found within my chest and put it a few millimeters away from my chest. All of this to see if I can recognize the color of my breathing. But instead, I found an old spider web, finding balance in my exhale. I found fine dust saying that someone has been walking these dusty webs. I think my former lover left with a spider instead of a part of me. I remember telling her that she's my breath, but who has been living in my lungs without my knowledge? I'm an old house's out of reach corner, tangled with a dirty web where I balance my breath. I'm a clean home, filled with toxic beings. I'm a part of a home where these long legs rarely reaches. And I was mother's side, and she used to greet me with her feather duster. I'm now assumed to be old enough to dust myself, but I'm a corner. I have no hands to work myself. All I have is this breathing. Thank you.
You know, I like it so much when I do this sound, to you guys. Always, I know, like, I have that confidence that when I get to poetry competitions or poetry performances,
Yeah.
Okay. So nice. So tell us, what was going through your mind when you were writing the poem that you just did for us? Because it speaks about the love that has left. So like, Oshapu.
By that time, by the time I wrote that poem. So how it actually came by is that Negiloko Winterfeld, and as I was chilling, I realized there is actually some spider web, just kafasa stulu. So I looked at the chair and I was just sitting like, and then that's how basically the poem came to. It was a day where I was just questioning my own sanity at the same time. So hence on the first line, it's I took a deep clean breath to search every passage in my lungs. Meaning I was looking within myself, and then I took everything out, maybe by writing or just by trying to feel however I was feeling that day to allow it to be. And I was actually even just going to the point of people leaving. And so when lovers people come to date you in terms of thinking that they're going to leave with something, but they're going to leave with nothing, but they might be getting a piece of your trauma sometimes. So it was a reflection of my life by then on how I feel. So yeah, basically that's what happened, including the dynamics of a family. You know, he now can do everything itself. So hence it goes by our mother's side. She used to greet me with her feather duster, but now I'm assumed to be old enough to dust myself, but I don't have no hands. So that's what it is about.
Nice. I feel like I think a lot or most of you poets, you've been through a lot, ne?
I would say so, but what I would say is that maybe perhaps a lot of us have been through a lot, and maybe some of us are just ignoring it, and we've just acknowledged and turn all of those into something that we can look out to and make it therapy. Instead of of allowing your pain to hurt you, you just make it into something that can make you live. So yeah.
Nice. So tell us, Soetri, like, how is the gap between Soli then, as in like soldier then, as in like prodigy then, and Soetri now?
So it is, in terms of knowledge, there's a huge gap in skills, because Soli was full of passion though. Soli was pushing. Soli would do everything that ran into him. Like in terms of sports, I tried almost every sport at school. In terms of activities, doing art. So Soli back then was taking everything in. And Soetri now has found that he loves poetry. And Soli is a major part of Soetri, because Soli is Soetri is merely giving a reflection of what happened to Soli back then and what is happening to Soli right now. And Soli knows all the concepts, all the metaphors that Colin has, the village that he grew up from. He knows all the riddles, so that is what is happening. There's a gap, but then a lot of them actually complement each other quite well.
All right. Give us some food, brother. This is so much for you guys.
So this one is called The Crow, Leshaka. So this is so as I was with Khabu, we were having writing exercises. We legit flip a book. It was TJ Dema's book, and then the moment he said stop, I would stop at that certain page, and I would ask him to say a number, and he says a number, and I take the number before that, and the number would be like on the stanza. So he chose number 3. So he took stanza number 3, and I took stanza number 2, and then we're gonna read that stanza and then respond to it or have a poem inspired by that. So the stanza that I took out from TJ Dema's Morning at Night says, "He never made it back. The one made to choose between a crow and whatever fracture till then passed for home." So this is what I have.
All right.
Sometimes we boys never come back home with all of ourselves. Like when we were told to choose between a crow and a kitchen, getting a whip instead, even after choosing a drawer. At home, our bones make up crows, protect the family's legacy. What is a legacy? For us, it's leaving your skin under your bed every morning, to go shave the hand of your great-grandfather's hand. We break a sweat and a few bones, scatter them when we play. Return home with a neighbor's broken rib. And that is how our parents saw someone to keep away from home longer, at least until the pots are ready. Behind the sweat is more than the sword. It is a revolution of bones, and a younger boy's canine missing. It is my jaw telling mother that I have not returned home. The salt on my lips say I have shaved another boy instead of a tree today. I sharpened my knuckles with my brother's tongue, cut out the disrespect in him with my fists, crushed his throat before he could cry, came back home with his boys, but no one listens. Instead, my sister cooks an oversalted meal, and we all lie that it is good. At night, we lie with our lips under the pillow, asking our skin where the rest of us are. We do not have an answer, just violence and faces to pick a bone with. To all the tears that kneeled, a pillow is a prayer mat. We too ask God to help us find ourselves before we break into kitchens looking for all the parts of us we were careless with. We are a prayer made without a body. We are silent, like a place where unanswered prayers go to. We are crows, guarding no cattle. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where I get humbled and I'm like, yeah, let me chill a little bit. You know what do I like most about your work, ne?
Yeah.
But I feel like you write about yourself, like how you grow up and how you grew up, like from a very young age. So I can easily relate. And to those who don't know, guys, I grew up with poetry. Imagine.
Yeah, they don't know.
How? Poetry.
Back then.
How? All right. So, like, do you guys in like, do you feel comfortable in poetry, having to consider where you've been, like having been a hip hop artist? You get me? Like, are you comfortable now that you are in poetry?
Oh, more than happy, more than comfortable. I found my place. I'd say I really found myself, I found my place, and I'm discovering more of myself with it.
Yeah. So tell us, so does poetry industry have, like, I don't know how to put this, like an upper body where, like, you guys are being recognized? Let me say, for example, in the musical industry, you have Woman, Channel O, MTV, Trace, like in poetry. Like, do you guys have like that upper body where, like, it recognizes young poets?
So far, the thing that poets usually do a lot in these times, gay slam, which is competitive poetry. And other than that, there is some submissions, publishing. There is also like some gigs, especially with the government and everything, where they actually get to have some poets on their program. Also, I've noticed that, for example, adverts have been actually having a lot of adverts with poets lately, which makes me happy. I've seen a lot of my friends and acquaintances in adverts. I've seen Puns and Things being in an advert for Capitag. We've seen Bangi Gancho. We've seen Leborang No. We have seen and more, and we will continue to see them. Like, shout out to Mario. So it's able to do even other things in terms of just performance.
Yeah. Nice one. I think you've just gave me like another question to ask you. Like I like the shout outs that you have done. So do you guys come on poetry? Do you have the beef like in the musical industry? Because you'll find like you guys are in a competition and I'm like, guys, these guys are in a competition, they're cool with each other. Like, do you guys have beefs like in the hip hop industry or in the musical industry as a whole, as poets?
Tough one, but I would say people beef, maybe even because of personal reasons, and maybe because of a certain crush that someone said someone's work is trash. We have kind of seen people calling others out, like online, saying, "Yeah, one of your poem is trash." But I have, it's something else. So people do beat. And the moment you actually get into even the poetry spaces, you notice that it's kind of some isolation here and there. They're like some groups. So yeah, unfortunately, which actually gets me to celebrate one thing that Kabisovili is doing right now. So Kabisovili have what we call the COVID Poetry Cipher. So he had like one beat. All the poets who will be participating will be using that same beat, and he started the challenge himself, and he sent a video and called me out. So basically write a poem, have a video to that instrumental, and record yourself live performing the poem. And then at the end of that poem, you call someone out and go like, yo, the poet who says this and that, you call them first. And after that, call them out. Say, yeah, I challenge you to have, to be part of the cipher. So the next poem that I'm going to do is the poem that I did for the COVID Poetry Cipher.
All right, give it to us. Cipher. All right. It's MarionTenderPablo live Instagram interviews with poetry. Give it to us, brother. Give it to us.
So in Kabiso's poem, he said, there's a line he said, made a baptism of my bleeding. And there's somewhere where he said, we've come for healing. So these are the lines that I also will be using in my poem.
All right.
When you are asked why your pain is too loud, tell them you've come for healing. You are not one to cry inside. Your insides are floating out of you like written pages letting go of a spine. You are a church, your tongue a praying mat. Your trauma, the trauma you speak is a prophet, making baptism of your bleeding. Here, rivers only dry when we have said a mouthful. When we have folded our organs into paper planes, when the children fly those paper planes, ask them if they have seen the sky more beautiful. Your exhale is a gentle wind. How is it to have your own lungs for a landing? Like, even those who claim that crying is a weakness see their reflection on the river of your tears. You are full of yourself, barely thirsty for yourself. There is no jaw heavy with the fragments of your screaming. You are hurt. You hurt to heal beautifully. You are healing with your wounds wailing. That's it.
All right. That was so true, guys. That was so true. Okay. Just tell us, how has, because I was reading a magazine that you were covered in, like how living in the rural areas and also in the city has contributed to your creativeness of writing poetry.
So what happens is that, so this question, wow, it was a difficult one to describe. Like, I was helped by the Wow Slam last year where they were like, the first round, what kind of urban artist are you? So I remember I wrote this other poem called Black Boy Stories. So the first line, which is what I'm going to speak about, it says, I'm a quarter of a century bleeding black boy stories. So I realized that my work is actually, for me, a bridge and the meeting line between city life and the villages. The content and the context, in a way, they actually relate to each other. For example, the whirlwind poem, like how it took a village to raise a storm, actually relates to even someone who's in the city. They can understand that. So that's what happens. My work is a bridge between the city life, township, and the urban areas. So, and the village is included. So it's actually even, my writing is my life. By that, I grew up in the villages. I've lived in the suburbs. I've lived in like squatter camps. I've lived in townships. So like that's it's usually, that is there's a poem describing that actually, which is called Running My Fingers Through Gauteng, which speaks of how I went from home and all the places that I have been to. So I'm going to upload that one soon, hopefully in a month or so. I'm going to upload it on my YouTube channel. So yeah.
All right. Yeah. So tell us, Poetry, about, there was a project that you did called, is it Pata or Pata?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is it Pata?
Pata, yeah, I did Pata. So
yeah, tell
Pata,
us a little bit about.
Pata was a collaborated play by me, Kenneth, and Kenneth's dancers, and we had Mika as well. So we had spoken word, we had like dance, like movement, contemporary dancing. We had music, we had a band. Like, it was amazing. It was actually one of the best times of me performing my work. I think that was the pinnacle so far of me performing my work. So what happened is that it was a reflection of men. So Pata is a Sotho word for hide. So it was simply men, hide. So it was a reflection on men who have actually been hiding himself. The man who was like in the villages, who hide the initiations and everything and the secrets, telling the boys that you don't cry out loud. So it was so beautiful. I really enjoyed that one, and I'm so happy because it was a 3-day thing, and it got like, it sold out, especially on the last day.
Nice one.
It sold out by that people were standing on their feet to watch the show.
Wow. Yeah. Great work. Because I realized like it was some kind of theatrical performance, ne?
Yeah, it was.
So, like, is there some kind of connection between poetry and theater? Because most of poetry competition or poetry performance, I find them in the theater spaces. Like, is there some kind of connection between theater and poetry?
Yeah, I think somehow, speaking especially for myself, being a poet, I ended up finding myself in theater, especially that I wanted to improve in terms of my writing. No, not just my writing, actually, in terms of performance and learning how to use the spaces around you. CSP taught me that much, that the tools that you have your voice, you have the space around you, and how do you, as the conveyor, speak to the audience? What mood do you set? What's your intention? What's your tone? What's your frequency? So all of those, having to learn that, I got to learn a lot of those in theater. It is important in terms of performance that you get to be familiar with theater. It really works.
All right.
Yeah.
Guys, this is MarionTenderPablo. Live Instagram interviews. It's Poetry Thursday with song.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Are you waiting on something?
We are waiting for the food, my brother. We are waiting for the food.
The name of this poem is called "On Trying to Write a Poem." I call it Diagnosis. There are days my book is a hospital building, my poems a list of symptoms. Reading leads me to self-diagnosis. Writing a poem feels like visiting a hospital. I write down all the parts of me that hurt. I break my left hand to confirm the rumor of the fracture in my right hand. Sometimes writing a poem feels like pressing every organ to find the parts of you that hurt. There are days I open myself up and forget to stitch myself back together. Trying to write a poem feels like self-diagnosis. Yeah.
Hey. You poet.
What did we do?
Yeah. No. You have this great way of just tricking somebody's emotions, you know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, tell me, Soetri, do poets have ghostwriters?
I wonder.
In your opinion, like
in my opinion,
in your opinion, like, you know, when you see somebody's performance, like, okay, there's some kind of disconnection between the performance and the performer.
No, I would say poets have ghostwriters. Instead, this is what poem kind of like some poets got to do, is that they would kind of use some people's lines in their own poems. So yeah, that's what they do. And not just that, like I understand that it's being inspired, but credit, it's not a bad thing, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. So what I'm saying is that if you actually taking something from someone, credit that thing and let people know that you've quoted and it comes from that person. Even when publishing, when taking a video, when performing that piece, you should acknowledge the fact that there's some inspiration, or maybe there's a certain line that you took from that. Because there are some people actually who kind of take a certain line and then then after that they and it becomes as if it's their own. Wow, it actually wasn't. So I think it's good to actually be honest with your own self so that you don't do that. And and stopping that and trying to be creative yourself is actually a good thing. You get to grow. So it's not just about trying to get the snaps right now. It's about growing and what your writing really does for you.
So how do you write your poems? Like, how do they come about? Like, you are waiting for somebody to hurt you, or like 1 line, 2 line, pick up line?
No. What happens is that there are different ways in how I actually get to start to write a poem. Sometimes, like, I'm just going all around the road and I see just something as with the chair. And then I would be like, okay, that would be so cool. I won't lie, most of my I just go like, damn, that is really a cool line. For example, this other poem called Blown. I was just chilling and then I just saw a leaf and I was just imagining the whole process and I was like, oh, flip. It is midday. Our leaves fold themselves into fists to fight the heat. So a certain line, I will just have like an archive. I have an archive in a whole storeroom of lines. Then I keep them. When I have a story to tell, a certain line will just come back in the mind because as much as keeping them then is actually keeping them here. So that's how I actually get to write. Sometimes, for example, like how it took a village to raise a storm came this way that I knew the story that I wanted to tell. I didn't know how I wanted to tell it. So that poem took like at least 6 months, I think. And when I finally had it, I was glad that I actually got to say it because it's one of the poems that are so, so close to my heart as it speaks of who I am, how I grew up, and the places that I've been in with the real characters and real places.
Nice. So, how it took a village to raise a storm.
Yeah.
That poem, is it gonna be fair for me to ask for it, like to recite it for us?
Yeah, I definitely can.
Yeah, please give it to us, brother, because we have spoken so much about it. I feel like everybody is ready to hear that poem.
A whirlwind walks towards Malapile's home's dusty yard, and he watches from the mouth of his mother's kitchen, ready to send it away. He has been taught how to point at hordes of whirlwinds to signal his family's unwelcoming of unclean air. The whirlwind then unclothes sand grains, wears its dust as organs as its spin walks to the neighbors. The neighbors too chases the whirlwind further from where could have been his home, and the young storm does the same with the neighbors' dust. Collect. In this village, boys are told to go play with their neighbors. Malapile is told to go play with Mashilu and his other friends. This would happen until there are enough barefooted boys to carry dust from their homes to the yards, and as they play, dust would grow as high as above their heads. Dust on their skin, their hair turning brown, their broom-like feet dusting off playgrounds, dust on their clothes, accompanying them to their mother's scolding, and dust left hanging on air. This happened each and every time Malapile broke things at home. Grandmother's guest plates, her saucers, and more things made of bone ash. She broke them all before learning how to break other boys' bones. Now he's a whirlwind in his grandmother's sight, wearing the village's dust and running, breaking into walls for fun. And it took me 24 years to know the identity of this dust. It is a lesson on how to break away from home, how to break the smaller boy away from his home, how Malapile breaks in tears until the dust in his eyes becomes mud, how mud holds in his crying, how mud builds a heart in his eyes, how the heart in his eyes is a symbol for his heart being away from home but closer to clenched fists, how nothing but anger grows in his eyes, how his eyes are open to staying at home but always told to go outside and grow. This dust is a smaller boy making his father's house more dirty, how his father's belt is the only hand that cares to whip the dust off his skin, his feet, his clothes. This dust is Mashilu and Moraka in a clean classroom, dusting each other's faces with fists, littering the classroom with blood. It is other boys cheering on who kept the other one clean. It is every boy wanting to be more dust. It is violently breathing out until angry exhales storms out like the whirlwinds we chase away from home. This dust is Mashilu, is Moraka, is Malapile being whirlwinds. His other boys were winding away from their homes, but every boy were winding towards each other's homes. Is every house in this village facing a blind storm, and this here is a story of how it took a village to raise a storm. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Soweto. Yeah. Bell. Soweto.
Yeah.
Are you showing me flames, man? Like from growing up, like this is
Yeah.
Most of the times, I always speak with the Mashilu on the We always speak like vele, poetry. Man. And one time I was like, you know what? Let me just go.
Yeah.
Watch Soweto. I think it was it last year or the year before last? We're in sound. I think Is it Trying to Speak Out?
Trying to Speak Out Loud, yeah. Trying to Speak Out Loud was last year.
Yeah, I took him and then we got the whole flipping poetry, whatever you guys call it. And we were like, vele. No. Okay, this is it. He's happy. He's here. Let's leave him alone. Nice one. So,
thank you.
How is your life right now being called the poetry champion compared to before you were starting with poetry?
It means that I have bigger goals. So the word that I'm gonna say is it's a phrase. It's a saying, a Chinese phrase saying "Jing Di Zua." So it was a story. Yeah, Jing Di Zua. So Jing Di Zua is it means the frog in a well. So it's a book apparently. So it's a book speaking about a frog that started as a tadpole, and then it was in a small pond. And then when you are in a small pond, when you look up, you see just a portion of the sky or of what is out there. And then you grow feet and you grow your hands. You limp out of that one and go in a bigger pond. And then the pond grows. You see, it's a circle. You go there. So it means that I had a certain number of goals and achievements that I wanted to tackle, and I did that. As soon as I get to a certain accomplishment, I set more accomplishments. So I don't just want to be called the Poetry League champion. I want to go out there. I want to check what more I should do. Me and Masai were having even this conversation that what comes after that whole title. So we're trying to push further than slam, so that you don't just disappear because now you're the Poetry League champion, all you have is a title. So we're trying to avoid that.
Yeah. Nice one. Nice. So do you have somebody in the industry who you look up to? Because I've realized about the people in the entertainment industry, we don't have that person that we can say, no, I look up to the president of whomsoever or a poet from whichever county it is. Yeah. But you guys, we can easily say, okay, I grew up with Soweto. I look up to him as much as he's of my age. Like, do you have somebody whom you look up to in the industry?
Oh, a lot actually. Masai Sipuru, I look up to him. Yeah, Moria, like the money improvement, and Tlabani. Clear is a hard worker. I look up to him. Tutigani, look up to him. I look up to Anthony Anaxaguru, who is a poet based in Britain at the moment. Sibogasi Jonas, I don't know how many I'm going to mention. I might mention the whole of South Africa and the world. It's a lot of people that I actually look up to. But Anthony, I really look up to Anthony. I admire his work. Just to mention a few, I'll just mention those before I actually mention a whole bunch of people.
All right. Do you still have food for us?
Yeah, I think I have the last poem.
All right.
So for the last poem, it's called Blown. It is midday. Our leaves fold themselves into fists to fight the heat. Beneath these branched bronchioles, light and shade share a pair of lungs. We inhale violent winds. The crevice on our fingers hide memories that choke in history books. We dance before closed libraries with open wounds and throats that clutch on voices like daggers in a hand. There is a sword fight within us. Blood turning our arms into iron. We are a ground that cannot be stored during the war. In our lungs, our fists forces ideas into places our voices could have reached, like an ear. We fail to move our bodies. We are blown by the breath of our delinquent spine and schoolmates, sneezing on our light shoulders, blowing our fists into dancing on another brother's face. Other sun's heated hatred falls our fists into drying with blood. So we punch in the wind, sometimes in a face. We collapse with the walls of our houses. We are men made of storms. We are storms blaming the wind. When we find sand in our open mouths, we spit it out when it is too late. Too late to say to our brothers that we are sorry. For other ears have been punched to a point of no hearing. We are a full moon and waves swallowing sand castles, leaving scars wet on battlefields, our arms as fringes drawing out blood. The kind of medicine taught on the streets, where anger is a diploma signed with pubic hair on a straight-lined genital. But our mothers too have been farmers of our arms and rage. They have beat our tears out of us, throwing syllables as pebbles at our glassy throats and eyes. The broken knows not how to hold water. It always runs dry. We have been looking for our tears in other people's eyes. We are a beginning, trying to find its tail by brushing off everyone crying on their burning shoulders. We still haven't found ourselves. We find ourselves under the sun, with fists folding into poisonous flowers in tears that have run dry. But how do you end a poem about violence when that violence insists on continuing even after your last stanza? I guess all I could have just said is that in this generation, loose arms are not safe. Hanging on a black boy's body, loose arms are not safe. Hanging on a black boy's body, loose arms are not safe.
Aye. Poetry, everybody, on MarionTenderPablo Live Instagram interviews. Poetry. When you were writing this poem, like, hey, what was going through your mind?
So it's a poem that started by me seeing a leaf, having started at a poetry workshop with Scribe Rights, which was in Hartfield, Pretoria. We were supposed to have an exercise of writing something that is familiar, some place that you're familiar with, the imagery especially. So I started by that, like it is midday. So I like having nature or the character of nature in my work, like legit nature, like Mother Nature in terms of trees, the ground. So yeah, I imagined like a leaf on the top of a tree, and then it's really like so hot that, apple, like the thing just end up shrinking. So I imagine that being a fist, and yeah.
All right. So maybe an advice to all of us, or to those who are still coming to to join poetry, having to have experience, or having to have the experience that you have by now, by the way you have performed from the first competition or from the first stage that you have showcased your talent. What advice can you give to an upcoming poet that they want to enter into this competition, wear and sound, speak out, everything like?
Do not take other people's lines and claim them to be your own. Every time when you have something that has someone else's line, credit those people. And push. Read, write, perform, research, read, attend shows, have fun.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, this is MarionTenderPablo live Instagram interviews. And today, I was not alone as always. I was with Mr. Soli Ramatri, aka at Soetri_SA, my pal. Thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you so much for sharing your work. Keep on doing the great work. Keep on growing. Keep on winning those awards. Keep on doing the most, my brother. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.